Now you get all of us in the car, my dad and uncles and stuff, we'd be going somewhere. You get all of us in the car, you're just waiting on somebody to take a breath so you can get into the conversation.
Oh yeah.
You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
but I think about this, I don't know, I think about what makes us happy.
Right.
And if we can really think about those things, and you know, when I started this a month ago or something, I can't remember, you know, I just said, you know, I'm going to start talking to some people.
Yeah.
And because I believe that there's treasures and people have a word that they can share.
Right.
That will help other people. And man.
Yeah, I mean, think of the technology now where we get to meet people through this that we never will meet face to face, but get to know, you know, each other. I would have loved to know some people in my past.
Right.
You know, in our area that maybe just wasn't family, you know, to know their story, to know, wow. And so now that we can do that, it's awesome.
I got to interview my grandfather back in the 90s.
Yeah.
And I've found the old interviews.
Oh,
and
man.
I interviewed him in a studio we had that was just, the room wasn't a whole lot bigger than this.
Yeah.
And on the back wall, okay, I'd put some 2x4s down the back wall, and I'd went down to the dollar store and bought some blue material and stapled it up. And they had those funeral flowers down there. And I took them apart and made me a little display out of them and put them on the back wall. And I got me and him sitting there, and he's talking about his life growing up and talking about it. And,
How awesome
and
is
that trend, and I play them every once in a while now. You know, they're years and years old, and I play them for people so they can hear the words that he said.
Yeah.
And I think there's so much wisdom going to the grave.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, that's going to the grave, and it's just a. I don't know, it's important that we share. All right, so we talked about some important stuff.
Okay.
Let's talk about money. Okay, money is important. Okay, because we trade our time for money and our money for stuff.
Right.
Right. So in your life, and I think you've been fairly successful. Okay, you've had money. I'm sure you paid your power bill. You drove up here in a nice car. You get gas. You can make it along. I mean, what's some advice you can give people about money? I mean, you know, people out there that are watching.
Yeah.
Because now here's the deal. I don't want you to go with me on the tithes and offering.
Okay.
Because that's all. I understand that.
Right.
But there's people that pay their tithes that stay broke.
Right.
There's people that give in the offering that can't keep their lights on.
Right.
There's preachers that can't even get electricity in their name because they've not paid their bills so long.
Right.
Okay? But there's principles that you've applied to your life that have caused you to move forward and be successful.
I think the biggest thing is let money be the tool and not the source.
Okay.
If money's the source, if you have to have money to say that I would feel good or I could relax tonight knowing I have money, you're giving an expectation to something that God never created that for. Okay. It is. We need it. Right. I mean, I think there's a verse in the Bible that says money is the answer to all things in one of the Proverbs or Ecclesiastics. But it's also the root, and it's just because you change its position.
Right.
You know what I mean? You take a tiger that'll eat you and you put him in a petting zoo, same tiger, you just changed his position to where he's not belong. And I think we put money in a position that's higher than what God wanted it to be.
Okay.
We've got to be good stewards. He said, occupy till I come.
Now, how can you be a good steward? I mean, do you buy everything you want? Do you,
No.
I mean, do you get the Mercedes? Do you go out and do you just blow it on high dollar clothes and fancy living?
Listen, one of the things I was talking today, I used to have a Volkswagen, old Herbie.
Right.
You remember.
Right. Yes, sir.
I loved Herbie. Man, I loved it. But I got to a place in life that keeping it was more stressful than letting it go. Letting it go was hard.
Right.
I actually seen the person who bought it, and I was like, now, if you ever want to get rid of him, she looked at me and she said, well, that's wishful thinking. I ain't ever getting rid of him.
Right.
Man. But when it's a tool, you can lose something knowing there's a greater good of why you lost it.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I didn't heartbreak and blame God. God, why'd you make me sell the car that made me happy? Or it's part of growing up.
Yeah.
You know, and if you can't learn to let go of things, the Bible says the spider starts in the forest but ends in the king's palace. Well, how's it get there? Able to let go of some stuff and reach out for something new. Right? It can't do everything. And so sometimes money just teaches you that, you know, it's okay not to have everything you want. You know, to be a good steward is not, good steward's not everything that you want, but it's keeping everything you have with a good attitude.
Right.
You know, and so I think, And we, of course, live in a time where
Right.
we're judged by what we do and what we drive, and that's fine. But I'm just saying, when it's not the source, it's not my source.
Right.
I'm glad. I know I need it to, like you said, keep the electricity on. But I also don't want to be so careless
Right.
with it. You know.
You know, I got a friend that sells cars, and I was listening. He said, if you'll notice, a car salesman usually is driving a car he's got hundreds of thousands of miles on, because he knows what they're really worth in the end.
Right.
And I think a lot of times in life, if we can know what's really valuable,
What's the
and
value?
be careful with stuff and be a steward over things. See, I think I've got friends that got money that don't know if they can have friends
Right.
because it's hard.
They
Okay.
trust. Yeah.
If you're looking at somebody, you're thinking, you know, I mean, I think sometimes things get too big. You know, I think sometimes houses have got so big.
Yeah.
And I mean, man, when you got 7.8 bathrooms and 13 bedrooms, I mean, you know, what are you going to do with all that
Right,
mess? Okay.
right.
I mean, if you're just doing it to sell it and you're living in it, and I understand it, but I'm telling you, man, you know, you got so much to take care of, and it becomes looks like it would become a burden.
Right. And I think, like you said, and I know even with me, the older that I get, you're more attracted to the simple part of life than the flamboyant side of life. I think because when you're younger, you think the flamboyant gives you your identity. They worked hard to get that.
Exactly.
They did that to get that. And it feeds that.
Yeah.
But as you get older, you're like, you know what? That house doesn't define me. If I live in a trailer or live in a big house, who I am is not defined by what I own.
Right.
You know, how I take care of it, that's a whole different story.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I believe it's pride. Okay,
Sure.
you know, we want to show somebody our big house. If we got a big house, we want to do, you know, to me the other day I had 20 people on my front porch after dinner.
Yeah.
We're all sitting out there, and the kids are wailing and having a time and beating each other with styrofoam swords in the yard, and everybody's swinging and going on. And to me, man, is wealthy. That to me,
That was a mansion.
But
Yeah.
man, what else could I want? You know, when I look at that and think about that, that to me is wealth.
Yeah.
And I look at the other stuff, it's just, you know.
My grandma Hayes's in Dix Creek was not probably the prettiest house to look on. It was cluttered inside. She milked cows,
Yeah.
you know, and it wasn't, you know, what you would call neat and in order.